Hey everybody. Alright, so today we're going to talk about the victory here in Europe, alright, of how in World War II the war is going to end specifically in Europe. Alright, so we have discussed the D-Day invasion, so America and the Allies have now got a foothold here in France, which is controlled by Germany. So from this point on, the biggest hurdle as far as setbacks is going to come in the form of trying to get into Europe. Once we're in Europe, it's going to pretty much methodically go in favor of the Allies. There's going to be a lot of losses, a lot of casualties, but the trajectory of the war in Europe at this point is going through 1944 and into 1945 is going to go in the Allies' favor. So there's two generals here, Omar Bradley and George Patton. So we had talked about George Patton the other day. This is him. His nickname is Old Blood and Guts. So George Patton, his entire goal here is to be the guy that gets Hitler. All right, he's still grumpy about the fact not being allowed to be in the D-Day invasion. He was a part of that ghost army situation. He's grumpy. The other super awesome tank general that we have is Omar Bradley. Both of these guys want to be the guy that gets to Hitler. So they're both really good. So when their armies, they have individual tank armies. When they get into combat, the other one should roll up and help them out. That's not what happens. They basically play leapfrog over each other as they go through Europe. The lack of teamwork should really hurt them both. But they're both so competent and so good that they keep winning, even though they're not helping each other out. They're just like jumping over each other. Because of this, which is not a very good way of doing things, but it does work out for them. The speed at which they run through Europe is pretty quick. All right. So one of the famous, and I should remember his name because you should give this one of the few Germans you give credit to. So the German commander that is in charge of Paris, right, which is the French capital, when Hitler finally gives him the order to withdraw from Paris because the Allies have taken France back over, he is given orders to set the city on fire and burn it to the ground. He, realizing all the art and all the culture and everything that's in Paris, is like, nah. And it's one of the very few times in all of the Third Reich in which a commander under Hitler directly disobeys an order because he feels like it's immoral, which is crazy that's how rare it happens. But this guy, so he's going to withdraw, pull the Germans out of Paris, and let the Allies take Paris back over, but does not destroy all the art and the culture like Hitler had told him to do. And it was just out of spite. It was just out of hatefulness. There was no resources gained by doing that. So I can't think what the guy's name is, but I do want to give a shout out that there are, normal people. I don't know how normal you say, but there are people who still have a conscience in the Nazi military. All right. So as they jump over each other, they are racing through France. They get right to Germany. And then there's a big battle called the Battle of the Bulge. There is a video I'm getting ready to show you right here that kind of goes through this whole process and does a really good job of it. The Battle of the Bulge, and it's called the Battle of the Bulge because once the Germans get pushed back into Germany and the Allies advance into Germany, Hitler freaks out and throws everything he has at the Allies. It's his last-ditch effort. He's out of military. He's out of everything. So he stretches the Allied lines back into France, and they have a little graph of it in the video I'm getting ready to show you. The dent in our lines is what's called the Battle of the Bulge. He's trying to break our lines and I keep pointing over here or over here. So he's trying to circle around behind the lines, break it, circle around behind us. We don't do that. We just keep taking steps back until he runs out of troops. And then it's an all-out sprint towards Germany. Battle of the Bulge is the last-ditch effort that takes place in Europe, and Hitler's going to be taken out. Now, as we race to Berlin where Hitler is, on the other side of Berlin, coming in from the east, are the Russians. Hitler knows that he's done. He knows what happened to Mussolini. that he got beaten to death. His body got hung from a street post and like carried around town. It was awful. Hitler ain't going out like that. All right. So it's kind of interesting. Hitler has a small personal army left in Berlin. He's got the Americans and the Allies, England, France, and the Americans, coming in from the west. And he's got the Russians coming in from the east. He has a small army to defend Berlin. I mean, they can't hold off anybody. But instead of equally... hold on, I'm getting ready to sneeze. I might need to pause this for a second. If I do. All right. He's got people coming in from the east, and he's got people coming in from the west. The Russians coming in from the east is what terrifies him. He does not want Russia to take over Berlin. If Russia takes over Berlin, Lord knows what will happen. That's his mentality. All right. Don't know how much he's actually talking to God, though. So Hitler, what he does is he takes all of his army, all of his troops, and stations it on the side to prevent the Russians from coming in. By the time the Allies show up, we basically can just walk into the middle of... I keep saying the Allies, like Russia is the Allies. They're also part of the Allies here. I need to clarify that. But he doesn't like Russia. The rest of... He would much rather have America, England, or France take over Berlin and therefore take over Germany than let the Russians in, because, again, he hates the Russians. So he puts all of his army just to prevent the Russians from coming in. So the Russians show up a little before us, so they lose like ridiculous amounts of people. They lose like 200,000 people trying to take over Berlin. America is going to lose like nobody. Because by the time we get to Berlin, all the fighting's on the other side of the city and we can come in. So Hitler, he's just here in the middle of Berlin. He knows it's over. So Hitler goes down into a bunker with some bodyguards and his longtime girlfriend named Eva Braun. So what he does, and like they say, you could like hear the bombs and the fighting like even way down in this bunker up above. So his last night that he's alive, he gets married. I guess he's like, my life's over anyway. Might as well get married. Dad joke. So he gets married, and so what he does is he gets married the next morning, all right? And this is when they say you could actually hear the footsteps. I don't know how accurate that is or not, but the legends, they could hear the footsteps of the Allied troops closing in on his bunker. Him and his wife now are going to both commit suicide. So his wife eats a cyanide tablet, which is like poison to kill her. He also eats the cyanide capsule, but in case it doesn't work, I guess, he also shoots himself after he eats a cyanide tablet. Now, an interesting thing that he does is he has his bodyguards take him and his wife's bodies out, take up the stairs, because he's like 10 floors deep in this bunker, take them upstairs. This is kind of a jerk move, like a last jerk move on Hitler's part. Like, man, walk to the top of the stairs and then shoot yourself. Like, why are you making your bodyguard carry your body up the stairs? But whatever. Take their body upstairs. Take it out into the street. Their dead bodies. Take them out in the street. Call out any Germans that are around there to come over and acknowledge this is Hitler. Once everybody acknowledges, y'all see that this is Hitler. Like, yes. Everybody needs. He then, his bodyguards then cover the bodies with gasoline, set it on fire, and burn them beyond recognition. The reason they do this, there's a handful of reasons why Hitler, this was his like last request to have done. Hitler does not want his body drug around the way it happened to Mussolini. He doesn't want that to happen. He knows if the Russians get his body, they're going to cut his head off, carry it around on a stick, which 100% the Russians would have done. Like, it would have been awful. All right. He does not want that to happen to him. All right. Because he doesn't want that symbolism. The reason he calls everybody out to look at his body is he is so egotistical. The last thing he ever wants is for somebody to come out and pretend to be him, all right, and then carry on what he's done. He wants people to know he's dead. So everything that he has built here dies with him. He doesn't want anybody else to take credit for this. He does not want there to be this, oh, Hitler's still alive. And even though that happens, just like Elvis and Tupac and stuff like that, oh, they're still alive. They're not. Hitler wanted to make sure that didn't happen. Hitler wanted people to know that he was dead and that the whole thing is done. And so nobody else can be like, oh, well, I talk to Hitler all the time. Here's what he said to do. He does not want that to happen. So he has people identify his body and then he has it burned publicly in front of everybody. He does this as the Allies show up, and basically America and Russia basically converge at the same time here in the center of Berlin on where Hitler's body is. Now, this is also important to say, and all this is in this video that's really good. I'm going to show you a little video clip. Hits a lot of things here. As they're racing through German-occupied land, the Allies, Russians, Americans, others, you know what we start discovering for the first time? This is when we discover the concentration camps. And we start realizing some of those rumors that we had been hearing were true, and there's like a new level of horror here. At the end of the video, you're going to see like regular civilians that are just seem horrified, like oh my gosh, what that part of the end of this video is when Americans discovered these concentration camps. We are so horrified by what is happening. We can't believe that the public would allow this to happen. So what we do, the Americans were the first ones to do this. We went and got the local town, like the nearby town of Germans, and brought them over to see what was happening in the concentration camps. We're like, how could you let this happen? We are trying to shame them into realizing how bad this is. And their reaction is the first time it really catches us off guard. These people have breakdowns. Like, they're throwing up. They're horrified. They're like, oh my God, this is what was happening, like, right next to us. And we're like, how did you not know? And they're like, like, they don't have a good reason for it. And it's because they just wanted to ignore bad things and focus. So as soon as Hitler dies and the war is going to end here, the hatred of Hitler, so the love of Hitler in Germany immediately switches to hatred. And not only do they hate Hitler in Germany, like instantaneously after this, they are so disgusted at themselves for falling for it. This is not like I mean, it's legit. They legitimately are horrified at themselves, and we're going to talk more about that, about how Germany to present day, all right, and probably for much longer after this, are constantly and vigilantly aware of it, of what happened in the Nazi and how they turned a blind eye to it, and they try to be the advocates for talking about how scary this can happen and how they view themselves. They are an educated populace. They are a democracy, and they let this happen. And it's the shock of seeing the concentration camps that were going on right in their communities, even though a lot of concentration, the bigger ones were way far away, these things are happening right next to them, and they just ignored it. So you can see at the very end, you see, they don't really mention it, but you see these people, like these civilians, like walking through the concentration camps, and they are just like, they're crying and they're upset. And we weren't expecting that. We thought we could get them in there and they'd be like, yeah, well, you know, and then we could like start punishing them. The fact that it like breaks the civilians when they see what has been happening really puts us in a weird situation. We're like, wait, y'all really didn't know this was happening? All right, so I say all that. There's a really good video clip right here. It's a couple minutes that talks about almost all that.
Within a month, there were 1 million Allied troops on the continent, fighting their way across France. As the Allies drew near to Paris, Hitler ordered the city burned. The German commander in charge refused, and on August 25, 1944, he surrendered the city to French resistance fighters. By September, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and much of the Netherlands were freed from Nazi control, while the Soviet Red Army closed in on Germany from the east. By October, the Allies had captured the German city of Aachen, but Hitler ordered a counterattack near the border with Belgium. The resulting dent in the Allied line gave the fight its name, the Battle of the Bulge. The Allies were pushed back with heavy losses of men and equipment. 100,000 Nazi and 19,000 Allied soldiers were killed. But in the end, the German army was forced to retreat. It would be their last offensive. Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich was crumbling. His country was in ruin, shattered by the onslaught of bombing and shelling. Over 5 million of his soldiers had surrendered to the advancing Allied armies, and the German spirit was broken. On April 23rd, the Soviet army stormed the German capital of Berlin. In the face of defeat, Adolf Hitler took his own life rather than surrender.
Here is a news flash. The German radio has just announced that Hitler is dead.
200,000 Russian soldiers died capturing Berlin. Finally, on May 7, 1945, the German High Command surrendered to Allied leaders. The long war in Europe was over. There was joy in victory, but with Germany defeated, Allied troops came face to face with evidence of Nazi atrocities. Auschwitz, Dachau, Treblinka, Buchenwald. Concentration camps housing thousands of living corpses. Countless Jews put to death in crematoriums and gas chambers. Mass graves holding thousands of bodies. Evidence of gruesome medical experiments conducted by the Nazis on their captives. History would reveal the true horrors of the Holocaust.
So, and we're going to bring that up here in a couple of days. We need to, because that really gets addressed, is how the population, how accountable is Germany for the Holocaust? Because what we originally think is drop the hand, like the society was part of it. And again, we'll talk about it when we get there, because it's a very unique look at human nature that we had not thought of before. It's a really unique event, and when we get there, it's pretty interesting. All right, so Victory in Europe Day is called VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. So Victory in Europe Day, May 8th, 1945. Everything is going fantastic. Everything is great. Everybody's high-fiving. Now, FDR, all right, does not live to see this. So the President of the United States, he's in his fourth term in office, all right? So he has been reelected in so he went 32, 36, 40. So in 1944, he had been reelected. So he's just starting his fourth term in office. And he had gotten polio again for a second time, which is why he was in a wheelchair to begin with. And then he has a stroke and he is going to die. All right. So FDR dies right before this. So when FDR dies, like the war is pretty much like it's over. The war is done. However, FDR isn't there to see it. The new president for the United States is a guy named Harry S. Truman. All right. He's going to come and he's going to take over. So he's actually the president. And he's been the president for like a handful of weeks when it's officially Victory in Europe Day. So while everybody's high-fiving, everybody's super hyped about this, you need to understand that Europe, England, France is like, oh my gosh, it's over. It's fantastic. America, we don't have the same emotions. And the reason is because we're fighting two wars. One we haven't talked about. We're getting ready to start talking about it here soon. The issue is Japan. So America's fighting over in Japan, and it ain't going good. It ain't going good, like, at all, in any way, shape, or form. So while everybody else is super excited and they're like backing out of the war, we got this big mamma jamma over here in England, in the Pacific with Japan, that they're starting to use kamikaze pilots, and there's all this stuff that it ain't going good. So while everybody else is super excited about this being over, America realizes all we are getting ready to do is just start focusing more on Japan. And we're going to have to do something here, and we're going to talk about it with the Yalta conference. So we're going to need help. We can't defeat them by ourselves. Like Australia's helping us out some, but they're nowhere nearly powerful enough to help us out the way we need to. We're really going to need help from Russia. We don't like Russia, all right? We don't like being friends with Stalin in World War II. We don't like it at all. But it's starting to look like with Japan, we're not going to, like, there's a legit thought that we can't win that war, all right? We think the only possible way that we can win is if Russia helps us out. So we have to start compromising around this time period here where everybody's happy, the war's over, before everybody starts putting all their weapons up. We're like, hey, Russia, before you put everything up, look, I know you're kind of salty at us because we didn't help you out with Stalingrad, but hey, think you do us a solid and open up another massive war to help us out? So it's a pretty awkward conversation that we're going to have here with Russia. So while everybody else is happy, I got a little video clip of Harry Truman taking over and FDR passing away. And everybody's super excited here in Europe. Understand that the war is not over at all for America because we still have the situation with Japan to take care of. But like England and France, they ain't going to help us out. They're backing out because that's, you know, I'm not going to talk trash about it. They're literally like, they're on fire. It's all they had left. So it's not like they probably did want to help us out. They probably cheered us on, our biggest cheerleaders, but they couldn't actually provide any support against Japan at the time.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin from CBS World News. A press association has just announced that President Roosevelt is dead.
12 years in the White House, a Great Depression and the world's greatest war had taken their toll on Franklin Roosevelt. With the passing of America's commander-in-chief, the weight of war fell to Harry S. Truman. Fighting in Europe was over, but the battle against Japan raged on. The new president would take extraordinary measures to finish the war and return the world to peace.
All right, so the war is over. Everything is great. This is the new president of the United States. This is Harry S. Truman. All right, so now what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the war in the Pacific in World War II. Here's the war in the Pacific of us trying to fight Japan. So let me get this out here. So Japan, if you can look at this map, this is Japan right here. All right, Hawaii is right here. This is where Pearl Harbor happened at, and this here is America. All right. So Japan's goal is to take over everything on this side. That is Japan's goal. All right. Japan wants to take over all of Asia. It's 60% of the world's population. So what happens is once we are attacked at Hawaii on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. So, as we've been talking about, the victory in Europe is over. Everything is great. The easiest way for me to be able to teach this course is to teach you everything that happened in Europe. We did all of that first. Talk about Eisenhower, Omar Bradley, George Patton. Talk about all of that and everything that happens in Europe. Now, we're going to go back in time. All right. We're going all the way back to December 7th, 1941, where America was attacked by Japan at Pearl Harbor. Now I'm going to teach you the entire story of what happens in the Pacific. While these are happening simultaneously, Europe and Japan, if I jump back and forth, it gets really confusing. All right. So we got to go back in time. So FDR, victory in Europe Day, FDR died. We're going to bring FDR. Bring him out of the grave, throw him back in his wheelchair, back to December 7th, 1941. It's go time again. We declare war on Japan, Italy, and Germany. So the reason that we're able to pull this off, no country in the history of the world has ever won a two-front war, a war that fought on two fronts simultaneously. The reason it was going to work out for America, other than the fact that, whoo, America, the reason that we're going to win, in large part, is because most of the battles that take place early on in the Pacific are naval battles. Most of the battles that are going to take place early on in Europe are land battles. So our army can go to Europe. Our Navy stays here in the Pacific. So we pretty evenly were able to divide it. If we had to fight two land battles or two naval wars, it wouldn't have worked out well. All right. So I want to show you what Japan does right after December 7th, 1941. The first thing they do, so I circled Hawaii, they've attacked there. Their Navy immediately leaves Hawaii and doesn't go back home here to Japan. They don't go home. Where they go is they come over here, all right, to the Philippines, all right? Let me make it a little smaller. Boop. Come over to the Philippines. The Philippines have a whole bunch of natural resources. Specifically, they have Specifically, they have a whole bunch of oil. All right, so they need oil. Look, I put a mark over my face. So they have a whole bunch of oil. That is what they want because they need that for their Navy. Now, we own the Philippines. When they show up in the Philippines, it's brutal to begin with. We have a leader there, all right? We have a leader there. His name is Douglas MacArthur, all right? So Douglas MacArthur is in charge here in the Philippines. When Japan goes and attacks it, so we don't have a Navy because they've just wiped out our Navy, not our aircraft carriers. We can rebuild back all our battleships and everything. Luckily, our aircraft carriers are fine. So we can't go defend the Philippines when they just get absolutely attacked by Japan, which is what happens. We send some special forces in to get Douglas MacArthur out. He's a general. We can't lose him. So Douglas MacArthur is an unlikable person. All right. I don't know if y'all have ever met an old person who is just extremely unlikable, or it doesn't have to be an old person, just anybody that's really unlikable. And the thing that really makes them the most unlikable is no matter how much of a jerk they are, they're always right. And it's just like, oh, I wish you would be wrong some, and they just never are. That's pretty much Douglas MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur is not a likable person. He's an older guy. He's a get off my lawn, kids type guy. He's a jerk, all right? He is also a military genius, all right? So he ain't friends with nobody. He's very abrasive in his personality, but he is a very good general. FDR and Douglas MacArthur argue all the time. And, because that's Douglas MacArthur, he'll argue with anybody, even if they're way above him. Argues with them all the time. FDR knows we're about to lose a whole bunch of troops here in the Philippines. And we do. But we can't lose Douglas MacArthur. So FDR sends a special forces unit to go get Douglas MacArthur and force him to leave. At first, when they show up in the middle of this battle, they're like, sir, we're getting you out of here. Douglas MacArthur is like, I refuse to leave my men. I want to stay here and fight. And they're like, no, sir, you can't. He's like, I refuse to leave. And the special forces are like, FDR has given us permission to shoot you in your kneecaps and drag you out of here if you said that. And he's like, all right, well, I will come back. So Douglas MacArthur leaves the Philippines, does promise to return, which he will later in the war when we retake the Philippines. He leaves thousands of soldiers. So the soldiers are forced to march from one side of the Philippines to the other, all right, to where the prison camps are by the Japanese. Tons of American soldiers die. So there's these rules when you capture people that you have to follow. You can't treat them bad in if they're prisoners of war. Japan immediately throws all this out the window. Japan sets the precedent real early that this ain't going to be normal. There's a lot of torturing. There's a lot of awfulness that takes place in the Japanese prison camps. So Japan, they want to be our friends forever. And we said, no, 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 no. So once they decide they're going to be our enemy and we declare war, they go the other extreme. So if you were captured by the Nazis and you're American, all right, you were treated fine. They were very respectful to Americans. There's nothing weird happening in any of the prison camps in Europe if you're captured by the Nazis. They had a lot of respect for Americans. Now, if you're a Russian captured by the Germans, they would torture you and starve you to death because they viewed them as inferior people. But Americans, English, the French, you got treated that they followed all the rules. Japan, if you got captured by Japan, it is going to absolutely be horrific, and there's a lot of torture and a lot of broken rules for how you treat prisoners. And it's called the Baton Death March, in which these American soldiers are forced to march across the Philippines in World War II, and it's absolutely horrific how they were treated. But it sets the precedent at that point on that this ain't going to be a normal war. So MacArthur is forced to leave. And he will eventually be back, but the Philippines is going to be crazy.
Islands, Supreme Allied Commander in the Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur, was ordered to flee from a Japanese invasion, leaving behind 100,000 U.S. and Filipino troops as prisoners of war.
I repeat those words.
MacArthur vowed revenge.
I shall return.
So that's him being forced to leave, swearing he's going to be back. So, what do I got here? I do have a video here, but let me go back to this map right here. All right. So there's going to be two major military battles that are going to take place here in the Pacific. All right. So all this is going on while over in Europe, they're doing Operation Torch and all that. Here in the Pacific, here's what happens. So after the Philippines, I'll start circling the stuff that Japan owns at the time. They own this. They own a lot of China. They now own the Philippines. Their next focus, and I'll do it in yellow because this is what their focus is. I don't even circle the Philippines. Yeah, I did. All right. They want to take over Australia. Now, they want to take over all Asian countries. It's really interesting how the media portrays Australia. If you see a movie or something from Australia, it looks like the typical race of people in Australia are white Europeans. Like, good day, mate, which is their accent because, side note, Australia got created as a prison for England. They, during imperialism, they just kind of discovered Australia wasn't really anybody there. Prisons cost a bunch of money. So if you're just like in prison, it's a lot cheaper just take you to the other side of the world and drop you off. So Australia started out as a prison and then became a whole country. Anyway, you see that, however, about half their population is of Japanese descent. So there's a ton of Asian people in Australia, like half of it. So like in Asia, when they show videos and movies of Australia, it looks like a completely Asian country. Like that's the predominant race. In America, when you see stuff from Australia, it looks like a predominantly white country. It's kind of weird how in 2020 that still takes place. Anywho, so Japan wants to take over Australia because they view it as an Asian country. We're like, nah, it's not. We're going to take our first step here. So there is, I want to get this wrong, right here, where I just circled that in red. That is going to be the first huge battle we're going to stand up to Japan at. It's called the Battle of Coral Sea. So we send our entire Navy over there. We got like 4 aircraft carriers, and we got our massive, we're super sweet. We team up with Australia, and they have a massive Navy as well. I mean, they have 1 aircraft carrier, but we're looking at us combined. We're like, man, who can possibly stand up to us? And let me, I'll do it in blue. To symbolize, we'll say this little line right here is our Navy lined up shoulder to shoulder, being like, come get some, Japan. We know you're going to come try to take over Australia. Come get some. So we're super confident. Then the Japanese Navy shows up. And by comparison, this line is the Japanese Navy. It's enormous. Absolutely enormous. And when they show up, we're like, like, not good. And right before this battle gets ready to take place, where we would be absolutely annihilated, and this is the Battle of Coral Sea, a big fog rolls in. When a big fog rolls in, nobody can fight because you can't see what you're shooting at. So both navies start trying to take off airplanes, all right, off of their aircraft carriers to fly up above the fog and fly around and basically see when it's going to break. So there's like very little technology in these airplanes. This is the 1940s. So having to be exact and trying to land that plane back on an aircraft carrier when you can't see your hand in front of your face, it's got to be terrifying. And this is all like paper and pencil, like calculations, like where your aircraft carrier is. Had the aircraft carrier moved 10 feet to the left or the right when you're trying to land based on these coordinates, you're just either slamming into like the tower or the water. It's, again, pilots, that's a special breed of people. But both sides are doing this, and they don't really see when it's going to end. And then one guy, we get really lucky here, one guy takes off and goes for a joy fly, and he flies over and finds a big opening and looks straight down, and he sees all the Japanese aircraft carriers like hunkered together in this clearing. He goes back, tells the allies where the Japanese aircraft carriers are. We fly out, we attack their aircraft carriers. They can't follow our planes back because of the fog. They can't see it. So we're attacking them. Japan gets kind of like, it's like one good sucker punch we give them. And Japan wasn't prepared for it. So Japan is going to back away. All right, and they're basically going to decide we're not going to fight this battle. There's a couple interesting things about this battle. Number one, it's the first naval battle in which not a single ship fired a shot at another ship. This is all airplanes attacking ships and attacking other airplanes. Secondly, when Japan retreats, all right, we count this as a victory for us because Japan wanted to take over Australia. We count it as a victory. It's really a draw because like nobody's military really changed. We didn't defeat them. They just decided we don't want to fight this battle right now because that one good sucker punch, we happened to find their ships in the fog. And they're going to back off. So the first big battle that we're going to have is going to be the Battle of Coral Sea. It sets the tone because we realize at this point that this stuff is legit. Like, we've seen their Navy, and we got to figure something else out. So, that's going to lead to the biggest turning point of the Pacific. It's a really unique situation. Oh, man, I don't even think it's... is it on the map? I don't think... It's so tiny, it's not even on this map. But I'm going to tell you, it's called the Battle of Midway. There's a movie out about the Battle of Midway right now. What's interesting about the Battle of Midway, even the movie, is it is one of the most important and impressive military victories in the history of the United States. And we don't talk about it a whole lot. We talk about D-Day all the time. Midway, every military institution talks about Midway and how we won at Midway. Massively. We're about to take out the entire Japanese military and we're not going to lose hardly anything. The entire Japanese Navy at Midway. It's going to be epic, all right? It's one of the biggest lopsided victories in naval warfare in the history of the world. And America did it. And we don't talk about it. Now, why is that? Because we did something shady to win. And it's really messed up when you think about it. But at the end of the day, do the ends justify the means? We're already attacking civilians at this point over in Europe. All right. So what is morally acceptable changes. So here's what happens at the Battle of Midway. Even the movie that's out about the Battle of Midway doesn't mention. I was very interested to see if the new movie of Battle of Midway would mention how we won, and they don't. It just ends up being a whoo America, which it is. So all the rest of the world talks about this battle all the time, and what a great genius move it is. The Annapolis, Maryland, at the Naval Academy, they talk about it all the time, that this is such an awesome thing. But because there's something real questionable about how we did it, that we don't really talk about it in mainstream America. All right, so here's what happens. There is this island. Again, that's what I was looking at here on the screen. I have it on my iPad. There's an island, we're going to say it's about right here. All right. This island, all right, is called Midway. It's an itty bitty little island, and we name it Midway because it's literally midway between Japan and America. We both need this island because we need an island to refuel. We just need to be stationary to refuel. It's not that Midway has any natural resources. It's just a few square miles. It's a small island. Nobody lives there. America and Japan discover this island about the same time. All right. We both want to take it because whoever can control Midway it really helps them to be able to attack the mainland of the other country. So we both race to get there first. America gets there first. So what America does is we show up at Midway and we drop about 1,500 troops off at Midway in order to set up shop. And we surround it with our Navy, knowing the Japanese Navy is going to show up. When the Japanese Navy shows up, all right, they are preparing to fight us. Now, they're going to fight us with their aircraft carriers, all right? And so the aircraft carriers, you can't see the aircraft carriers. They're way off in the distance somewhere. Sonar, radar can't detect them. You don't know where they are. All you know is all of a sudden all these airplanes show up. It's like a beehive, and the aircraft carriers are just devastating, all right? The entire Navy is focused on aircraft carriers now. Japan has like twice as many aircraft carriers as we do. So Japan shows up, and they're expecting to have to fight our Navy, all right? So these fighter jets that take off, and this is what's really important. The fighter jets that take off from an aircraft carrier have to know when they take off whether they're getting ready to fight something on the land or if they're going to fight something that's in the water. And here's why. They have a bomb, like one bomb that like sits underneath their plane. It's a small little Porsche type. It's a fighter jet, like a little sports car. They can carry one good sized bomb. All right, itty bitty compared to like bombs out of a bomber, but they can carry one bomb that can do some damage. All right. So if you're going to fly over land and drop that bomb, you just drop the bomb, it goes kablooey, all right? However, if you're going to attack a ship that's in the water with that, if you're flying 400 miles an hour and you're a mile and a half in the air, trying to drop that tiny little bomb and hitting a moving target is like impossible. So what they want to do is basically drop torpedoes. Instead, you drop it in front of the boat, all right, and then it runs in and hits the bottom of the boat, which is more effective. So you have to know which one you're going to attack, because if you're going to attack the land, you just drop your bomb as normal. If you're going to attack a boat in the water, you have to put these wooden boxes on the bombs, all right? Because what those wooden boxes do is if you see a boat up ahead of you and you're a fighter jet, you drop your bomb early, it hits the water, and then goes in and hits the bottom of the ship. Those wooden boxes do a couple things. Number one, when that bomb hits the water, which is like hitting concrete, it does not detonate it at the time. So it hits the water and doesn't detonate. And then the bomb sits there and floats because it's in a wooden box. There's a little propeller on the back of the box that'll kick on, and then it activates the bomb, and if it hits the side of the boat, it explodes on impact. So if you're going to attack ships, you put the wooden boxes on it. If you're going to attack land, you don't have the wooden boxes on it. That's really important here. Japan rolls up fully expecting to fight the American Navy because they see our Navy there. They have all the wooden boxes on their bombs. When America sees a Japanese Navy show up, we retreat. And we leave all 1,500 people here on Midway. It's horrifying to hear the radio transmissions of them being like, where are you going? Why are you leaving us here? Like, we were just leaving them there to be slaughtered. The Japanese Navy sees America has retreated because we're too afraid. They're like, all right, let's clear out Midway. And they go, so now they're going to be attacking the land. They go to all their fighter jets and take all the bombs, all the wooden boxes off their bombs. All right? Because now they're going to attack the land. All the aircraft take off from their aircraft carriers and fly over Midway, bomb Midway, absolutely annihilate all the American troops that are there. Absolutely slaughter them. In the middle of this battle, here comes the American Navy roaring back in. Uh-oh, this has been a complete, on Japan's part, this has completely been planned by America. We sacrificed those 1,500 men so that Japan would take all their boxes off of their planes. Now, the Navy comes back in. It's now going to be a naval battle. Before those planes can attack the United States Navy, guess what they have to do? They have to put boxes on their planes. Guess where they put those boxes on at? On their aircraft carrier. So all these planes flying around Midway, guess where they immediately have to go? To their aircraft carrier. We find every one of their aircraft carriers and we destroy every one of their aircraft carrier with all their aircraft sitting on top of it. You know how we found them? We just followed their planes back. We wiped out the entire Japanese Navy in a single afternoon at the Battle of Midway, but we had to sacrifice 1,500 American troops to do it. It's fundamentally is going to change this war. Japan can't stand up against this anymore. How are we going to do this? It's going to be a huge, massive change after this. The Battle of Midway fundamentally changes it. Japan can no longer stand up to us. All right, that I wanted to get a little further, but I don't think I am.
Supreme Allied.
We already saw that one. Talk about the Battle of Coral Sea and the Battle of Midway here.
In the Battle of the Coral Sea, U.S. and Australian forces resisted an enemy attack, preventing a Japanese invasion of Australia. In June 1942, the Japanese launched a secret plan to capture a U.S. military outpost at the Midway Islands, 1,000 miles from Hawaii. But the U.S. intercepted a secret communication and sent a carrier group to ambush the approaching armada. Japan struck first. Waves of warplanes attacked U.S. forces on the island, inflicting heavy damage. The U.S. responded, sending torpedo planes and dive bombers to attack the Imperial fleet. The first squadron met fierce resistance and suffered tremendous losses. But then, within the space of an hour, the U.S. turned the tide of battle by destroying 3 Japanese aircraft carriers. By late afternoon, Japan was in full retreat.
So the Battle of Midway, massive turning point. At this point, America's like, this is fantastic. This war, boom, going easy. Then it gets crazy because Japan starts doing some crazy stuff with these kamikazes, these suicide bombers that we are not prepared for. And we're going to pick up on that.